Hey guys, how's it going? Today I wanted to talk about another fun subject. It's about hobbies and toys and basically a lot of stuff of our childhood that we still like as adults. And I think it's kind of funny because the older generation, with our parents and stuff, they always used to say at a certain point, you better grow up, you better study hard and forget about all these games because they're not very useful. But then what's pretty funny is that there's a lot of adults now that are bringing back the toys from the 80s and from the 90s when they were thrown away. And now if you look at them on eBay, they're actually hundreds of dollars, that they're mint in box and even more sometimes. And what's funny is that at the same time parents would say, don't play your video game, get back to work, study, you can't be spending so much time in front of the television. And then all of a sudden now you're seeing all these esports that are basically making more money than sports like the NBA. And I think it's kind of funny that if we hadn't listened to our parents in some way, we could have had esport leagues a really long time ago. And at the same time, all these toys that we maybe even gave away would have made us millionaires. I mean, if you really think about it, it's kind of crazy when you think about, for example, I have a couple of Karate Kid toys that I had from the 80s. And I looked at one of the boxes that I had. Unfortunately, of course, it's not mint in box and all that, but it comes down to like $1,000 for the little set of Ralph Macchio and Daniel-san and Miyagi, Pat Morita. And I think it's kind of funny that if at that time we kind of had the vision of buying multiple of these, then basically we would have had thousands and thousands, if not more, dollars. And it's kind of funny how everything from our childhood has kind of become a collectible, because at the time people used to grow up much faster. I think I'm seeing a lot more people that are just starting families much later in their 30s and settling down and they don't necessarily have a set career in their 20s, which is kind of funny because the older generation used to get those jobs at an earlier age and used to get married at an earlier age, and then at the same time they would stay in that same 9-to-5 job for 30 years until they retired. And nowadays everything's kind of changing in some way where we're not able to do that anymore. The way that companies are structured, some people are lucky and maybe they also want to live that sort of lifestyle, and they're able to get a job that will last for years and years and years. But now most times, if you look at the average time frame that somebody keeps a job, it's about 3 years, which is kind of interesting because of these things. I feel that everything has kind of changed in the way of being an adult as opposed to being a child. I feel that kids from the 80s and 90s, they're still watching cartoons and enjoying their video games. And for example, I was watching this documentary and they're saying that they brought back the Masters of the Universe toys, and that most people who are buying them are people in their 30s or 40s, because whatever toys that they couldn't get at those times and that they couldn't afford, now these same people have started making good money, or they've already made money, and they're seeking to get them back to buy these toys. So either they buy the old collectibles from the 80s, or they buy these new versions that have come out and that are actually a little bit more detailed and that they're really highly collectible in some way, and they're priced in that way too, which is funny. And I had a thought a couple of days ago, which I thought was also pretty cool, was that nowadays old people have a hard time with computers, whereas we grew up with computers. So what's going to be funny is seeing the little old 80-year-old person that's texting and addicted to their game, which is kind of a cool thing. I don't know, maybe socially, we always say we have to talk to people more, but at the same time, maybe it's okay to be solitary sometimes and being in front of your computer screen and playing that game. And as long as you're enjoying yourself, maybe it's going to give us longer lifespans. Who knows? Because when we get less mobile as we age, depending on the person, obviously, some people are still able to be active, but you never know what kind of accidents happen in one's lifetime. And if you have a lot of mobility problems, at least you're able to play these games and enjoy yourself, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, I love games. I love my toys. I still love cartoons. And yeah, I think it's really, really interesting that we've evolved in that way. Of course, now the downside is that there's less kids in some way, at least in first world countries. So we have more elderly than there are adults, and as opposed to like places that have less money where basically they have a lot of kids. That's another subject, but yeah, we're all these adults now are remaining the same way as they were as kids in some way, and it's kind of interesting to see that difference. I guess that we all have that kid inside, but circumstances in the olden times have made that adults had to be adults at a very young age, and they weren't able to live a proper childhood in some way. And now the reverse is that adults of nowadays are remaining like children too much in some way. So hopefully one day we're able to find a better balance. But I must say, I love my video games, I love my toys, and I don't see that changing. But who knows, maybe I'll become a serious adult one day. But for the moment, I still like my games, and I guess that's what it is, and I'm not the only one. Well, that's it for today. Have a great day. Bye.